Q2. I wanted to talk about a camera that we get asked about a lot, which is the Leica Q, and more recently, the Leica Q2.
Please don't ever leave me.
These are both fixed lens 28mm full frame cameras from Leica. This one here is actually the Leica Q2 Reporter edition.
Well, why don't you tuck your boner away, Carl?
Just ignore the color, and it's got this little hand plate on it. But yeah, same internals as the Leica Q2, so this is just for a point of reference. You'll probably know this is a 24 megapixel full frame sensor, and this one here is 47. So, and this one is weather sealed as well, whereas the original Q isn't. So, I mean, it's still a pretty solid build, but I probably wouldn't be taking it out in a thunderstorm. It seems like they both share the same quality 3.68 million dot EVF, but the shape of the Q2's one has been slightly changed there with the straighter edges. With the rest of the back of the camera, there isn't any other huge differences other than you have one less button on the back of the Q2 here. So you've lost the ISO button on the back compared to the Q1, but that's not really an issue because if you press play here, sorry, if you press menu, it takes you to this quick function menu, so that will just, you can sort of scroll through all these, and that has all the settings that you're going to need. So like shutter speed, ISO, aperture, so yeah, whereas on the Q1, it just takes you to a regular menu list. On the top here, there's no real significant changes apart from this dial here on the Q1. This is such a small gripe, but it does drive me nuts a little bit. Instead of just going from off to on, it goes from off to single and then to continuous. But yeah, on the Q2, it's just an on and off dial here, which has sort of been made a little bit bigger, easier to grab. But with this one here, you can accidentally easily push it straight into continuous mode, which is, I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but it's just like, you don't always want to be in continuous shooting. So yeah, but I'm glad that they fixed that on the Q2. Getting a Leica Q or Q2 is by far the most economical way to get into the Leica system, because you are basically getting a 28mm Summilux with a body attached at like a discount, right? So this lens here is basically an autofocus 1.7 version of the Summilux 28mm 1.4, which is an incredibly good but incredibly expensive lens. So even just that in itself is a pretty awesome value proposition. This lens is amazing and it has enough resolving power for both sensors, so that's not going to be an issue. You've got the macro mode toggle here, the aperture dial, the front hood, and then you've got the manual focus tab on the back here, which will click back into place if you don't want it to move. And I've left the lens cap off because you would have seen at the start of the video how often this thing falls off. I'll be the first to admit that 28mm it's not really my favorite focal length, but honestly I was really happy to have this camera when I went overseas. I did take another camera with me, but most of the time I ended up just carrying this around, especially when we were in places like New York, which were like really crowded and you don't want to draw attention to yourself. And also the wide angle was really good for just being in those kind of like more crowded spaces, and when you're walking around, you know, big buildings and lots of vertical lines and stuff like that, I think this camera lended itself really well to those kind of situations. That's probably enough talking about the camera, so I'll just chuck a few images up on the screen to just sort of give you an idea of how I used it. I'm not going to put the settings up, it's really just to show how it renders, and you know, it's about the photography at the end of the day. Or yeah, at least that's the excuse I'm going with. one thing I did notice when editing the files from these cameras is that they do tend to lean towards cooler tones, which is a little different to other cameras I've used. I don't know if it's an auto white balance thing, but it does mean that you get these really rich greens and blues, which actually suits my editing style really nicely. This second batch of photos, these are all black and white, but these are all shot on the Q2. You can see that these are all mostly shot wide open because it was not really ideal lighting conditions, but the sensor and the lens holds up really well in those kind of conditions, considering that it is a 47 meg sensor. And yeah, you can obviously see that there's a pretty substantial jump in resolution and image quality with the Q2. So hopefully that helped some of you guys decide between buying one of these two cameras or a mid-range sedan. If you have any more questions, just hop on over to progear.co.nz or flick us an email or a call, and we'll see you in the next one.